If you're a business owner or senior manager, you probably had more than enough about all the wonderful opportunities awaiting you in the era of digitalization.
Whether it is big data, cloud, data science, or whatever buzzword is currently trendy.
If you would like to hear someone dissecting these claims and showing you what it actually takes to improve business processes, you're in the right place.
This is Between Data and Risk, where we discuss real-life examples of what works and what doesn't in the world of business operations.
Hello, I'm your friendly neighborhood data guy, Dr. Marian Siwiak, and with me is our resident risk steward, Artur Guja.
Hello.
Welcome to Between Data and Risk. Today we'll have a look at heat, waste, wisdom, and computing power. And we have with us Mark Bjornsgaard of Deep Green, who agreed to share some of his experiences with us. Hello, Mark.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for joining us.
Nice to be here.
It's a particularly interesting topic for me personally, because there's a combination of risk and computing and heat and swimming as well, because there are pulleys involved. So let's start off the bat. The latest venture that you're involved with is, if I understand correctly, taking data centers, which are obviously, as well known, huge producers of heat, which is a nuisance and usually goes to waste, and you're redirecting that to actually useful purpose, specifically heating pools.
Exactly. Not just swimming pools. Pools are where we started, and we love swimming pools, and they're brilliant as a heat sink because they very reliably lose heat, so that's good. Increasingly, our life will be district heating systems, so somewhat larger data centers, and feeding our heat into the heat pumps that are going to be obviously running a lot or increasing numbers of district heating systems. So yeah, but the principle is, as you say, if you can effectively use the electron twice, then why wouldn't you?
My question is, because I've been freezing in English swimming pools. When we were leaving I had to use a wetsuit when we were going there. Literally.
So cold.
The question is, how much heat really generates an average data center? Like, how many degrees you can increase the comfort of the average swimming pool?
Well, certainly in the UK, there are, I forget exactly how many swimming pools there are, public swimming pools there are, but we've lost many hundreds of them because they've been closed down. The simple answer is that something like 90% of the heat that comes out of computers we can capture as useful heat. So assuming you size the data center, the right size data center for the right size pool, you can do pretty much the whole pool. Now, of course, there's seasonality, but even in summer, pools lose a fairly reliable amount of heat. District heating systems much bigger. One of the many things we do to be able to kind of even out base load, so be able to use more of the heat. We size the data center to the size of the heat pump, but then we also use different technologies within Octopus. So Octopus own us, they own the business now, and they have many different businesses in their ecosystem, one of which is Kensa, which is ground source heat pumps. So you can actually use the ground as a heat battery in the summer, and then you draw off it in winter. So there are all sorts of ways that you can manipulate where and how you store the heat and get the heat off. But it's really only up until 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, artificial intelligence and high performance computers is really where this lands. The reason why we developed the business 10 years ago, the reason why it works now is really because of these incredibly dense workloads that are going on in data centers now.
So when we discuss kind of this thing, my immediate thought is co-location. So you locate
Correct.
the data centers; they're no longer built outside in the sticks somewhere. You have to actually get them. These data centers, are they primarily used by local municipalities, sold off or hired by computing firms? Who's your client on the other side?
Who's the customer? Good question. The answer is quite a diverse range. So because we're relatively well known in the data center industry, we are seeing demand from enterprises, from academics in the UK, from advanced manufacturing and pharmaceuticals, So a whole bunch of people who were actually traditional high performance compute users, before we all started to talk about AI, the advanced manufacturing, pharma, they were all using high performance compute anyway. Now, very interestingly, in the last, probably I'd say even in the last 3 months, you can see a noticeable uptick in enterprise AI workloads. So it was all happening a bit small. It was all proof of concept. We had a really interesting statistic from Dell a couple of weeks ago. 82% of proof of concepts being done in the public cloud are destined for on-prem or co-location. Most enterprises have no intention of using Amazon or Microsoft public clouds for their AI. They don't trust them. The US cloud, the Patriot Act, the Cloud Act mean that your data is just not safe in hyperscale. It can be repatriated whenever anyone likes. And we all know, we can all see what's happening to copyright and in the kind of AI space. So that for us is a big tailwind. We have, people, any enterprises, they're doing their proof of concepts, obviously use the public cloud, right? It's easy, simple, you just spin stuff up. When you productionize it, then you want your own data center. And what's interesting about what we're doing is that we're not building massive data centers. In the UK, they're 5 to 10 megawatts. We have got a few larger sites, but mostly that size. In the States, slightly bigger. But what's good for enterprises is that they want the whole site. So if you're an enterprise and you've got, a relatively large enterprise, but you only want kind of half a megawatt or a megawatt, the advantage of doing it this way is that we can air gap a site and just light fiber between a data repository and the site, and it can never. So from an enterprise point of view and a security point of view, you're not on the internet. You can do your refinement training. You can do it kind of behind closed doors. So a wide range is the answer. And honestly, it's so early days. We don't really know. I got a call from a CEO of an enormous business. I nearly fell off my chair it was 2 nights ago. I was scrolling through LinkedIn. I think my phone must have gone. And I was scrolling through LinkedIn and I saw this message and it said, I'm from the CEO's office of this incredibly large business. Name of CEO would like an hour of your time. And it was like, no, come on. It's not that, can't be true. Anyway, I Googled it. And it was. So I immediately went back and yeah, so you're now seeing inbound leads, I think. There's a traction that's emerging now that only longevity and time in the market gives you, really.
So for companies with all the ESG reporting and having to report on the energy sources, this must be a huge boon where they can show that their computing, which is a major contributor to emissions, this is now spread with the heating.
A major contributor, but honestly, most enterprises still are in the very early days of worrying about that. For the first year of selling, we flew through the green ESG flag. It was like, it's sustainable, it's blah, blah, all the great things about using, we're giving heat away for free, so it's amazing for local communities. The truth of the matter is, people care about that, but they really care about price. The reality is no one's going to buy this if it's more expensive. But the truth is we're cheaper. It's actually just cheaper to do it like this. Like all good green solutions are at their foundation cheaper because you're almost always being more economical with raw materials. So we don't pay for our land. We swap land for free heat. When you cool in this way, our actual cooling costs are lower. I say this a lot. We framed it as we're really magnanimous. We're so generous. We're giving this free. The reality is we're just richer. No, there's a reason why Octopus could invest in us.
It reminds me podcast we had some time ago, and we were talking about values in the company. And I asked a question about one case when the values stood before the profit. And we never got the answer.
Well, we individually within Deep Green, we kept it about 10 years. We invested in this when, honestly, it was not a sensible thing to do to invest. And kudos to British Gas, who the business we started with as a business called Heater, and these beautiful little data centers that we hang on the side of hot water tanks. Amazing business. And they're still going. But you don't do this. You're not, everyone thinks this is our 8th business that we've gone from kind of scratch to scale. So we're fortunate enough to have, you do make a little bit of money on the side, but you're not an entrepreneur for money. I mean, you can get, you're an entrepreneur because it's a game, right? It's the joy of it. the sheer joy of building something and figuring something out. That I don't know many entrepreneurs who are successful who haven't got that innate just passion for the idea, really.
One more question from me. You mentioned, because I noticed on LinkedIn that you have started 9 years ago.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to ask, how was your journey, across the time? Because
Yeah.
you got big, I would say, like really big last year, to my understanding.
Yes.
And previously it was long, tedious.
Yeah, overnight success. It's like being in a band. You play the sweaty clubs for 10 years and then you have your first hit single, everyone thinks you. My background is in venture capital, so I was never meant to really be being CEO of Deep Green. We built Heater, the prototypes, and then we developed Heater as a business, 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago now. And Chris, who runs Heater, is my next door neighbor. He lives just across the way, and he was involved in a business we sold to GSK in the States called Alligator. We were doing crazy things with toothbrushes. We were the first people to put a SIM in a toothbrush. We had a SIM-enabled toothbrush. It was crazy business. It was amazing. But we weren't working on it for 10 years. We developed Heater, and what we do a lot with businesses is I like to think of it as waiting in the waves. You just wait until the time's right. And that's what we do with Deep Green. We waited, and sadly, the Ukraine crisis created the kind of general macroeconomic environment where
energy became
this was ready to go. AI was coming, energy was, and then that's when you strike. So, and we're doing the same with Deep Green has an elder brother business, which is an even more amazing business. And we're just pushing the button on that. Chris is also involved in that. And we're doing that business with another energy company. But that has the potential to be bigger than Deep Green. And we thought that would go first. Sometimes life just, you schedule your life around the universe rather than the other. If you try and sort of beat the universe up, it tends to bite back, doesn't it? So.
Oh, it does. It does.
Yeah.
You mentioned.
Are you, I don't know, in a position to tell us about this other business as well? Because you got my curiosity. So the question is, can you tell us what is this other business which is connected?
Well, it's called Juicy, and we've been, as you do, we vested in an EV subscription service called Elmo. So a lot of the electric cars of Elmo were on our balance sheet before we sold it to BCA. And for a long time, we've been looking at the price of lithium. And thanks to Donald Trump's brain farts, we are now at the point where we've got an oversupply of lithium into, you've got all the major Chinese OEMs are wanting to keep the factories going. And the price of lithium has come into a window where we think, in the UK at least, we are puzzled by why we're trying to do heat pumps. We think batteries are actually the foundational layer of the energy transition. And once you've got batteries in, then you do heat pumps and solar. Because batteries, at the moment, we think we can give something like 14 million homes a 10 or 20 kilowatt battery, and we can give them the battery for free and take their energy price down, levelized to about 30% off the current UK energy price. Chris, who's a genius, has got it. Well, 3 years ago, we got it down to the fact you could plug the battery into two plugs. A domestic double plug sadly became illegal last year, but we've got it down to the fact that we can do the installation very quickly. We can buy the lithium very, very cheap. So we think we've now got a proposition where we can do a mass deployment of domestic batteries. Mass. I mean, with Deep Green, we've got £12.5 billion of Octopus infrastructure money to build 300 megawatts of data centers. We're going to raise probably double that with Juicy, and just the idea is that we'll take the whole of the UK, or most of the UK's housing stock, kind of off peak grid. Anyway, that's the idea. Yeah, it's a lovely idea, but it's so simple. It's a bit like Deep Green. Everyone knows it. Yeah.
So this is it's touching directly on the consumer. You want to take consumers. Is there any plans to take the Deep Green to the consumer as well? Because I know many people who are running their own mini data centers in their houses, and I know that my computer down under my desk is a huge heater. I really love the warmth from it. So. Sorry, am I not heard?
The line's not great. I don't know whether that's me or.
No, it's Artur. I also have a problem.
Okay.
Weaker every
Yeah.
second word. But I think the question is it possible to take the deep green idea also,
Yes.
under the roof?
Well, that is heater. So heater is we always imagined that heater was going to be the B2C version, that you could really, every house should have a little data center in it, and then we could connect all of those together and create this kind of mesh, this substrate of compute. And that was 10 years ago, and that was, of course, the world wasn't really ready for that 10 years ago. But I think we're getting to that stage. So the kind of B2C version of Deep Green, I think, is just heater, really. Yeah.
I have another question about another of your business, because we, in our, let's say, our motto is what works and what doesn't in the world of business operations. And, I've seen that you did a lot of different things, and I must say it's a very impressive portfolio. Are you using secret source developers in your works? Because we are also, let's say, very much focused on nearshore.
Right.
So the question is it something like that you also utilize?
Yeah,
in your work?
Secret Source, my best friend from school and I set up Secret Source. Rich Clark, who ran Secret Source, we met when we were 13, and I'm 50 now, so we've known each other 37 years.
Couple of years.
A couple of years. But we've sold Secret Source now. So we've amalgamated Secret Source with a UK business called Evolve. The Secret Source will still operate as a separate business, but we've always used Secret Source developers. And in terms of what we've done with System 2 and all of our different ventures, having techies on tap, having developers that you can go to spin up prototypes or whatever is been massively important. You'd say probably in the world of AI, in the world of an ability to kind of, talk to an LLM and develop a website, it's probably less important these days. But certainly 10 years ago, it was really important. Yeah, really, really important. Yeah.
Seeing how Klarna is now going back to human
right.
employees, I think access to developers will be rather important for some time yet. Because we are talking also about, like you said, there were big shifts in geopolitics that actually impacted your business, like, of Trump dropping the price of lithium for you, unfortunate conflict in Ukraine and unfounded aggression, that actually changed the energy market because the cheap gas is no longer lying on the streets. My question is about impact of Brexit on Secret Source. Like, they left UK after Brexit.
Yeah.
And I guess some other people who know how to code as well. Like, did you notice back then the increase in interest in your developers? Did you observe the impact of Brexit on tech market?
I don't think we probably, if it was, we possibly didn't notice it as keenly as events like COVID or Ukraine. I think I was a fervent Remainer. Loved the idea. I just feel. The idea of integration and cooperation and mutual respect. I was so gutted when we left the EU because I had a business in there as well. That we'd committed. We weren't just emotionally committed; we were sort of financially committed to the EU. So, I don't think anyone can deny it's been a total disaster for the UK, and goodness knows when we'll ever go back. Hopefully sooner rather than later. But I can't say it made a big difference. I don't think it necessarily made a big difference. It made a big difference to selling it. Selling Secret Source to a UK company post-Brexit has been a nightmare. That's been an absolute nightmare. So actually doing business in a post-Brexit world is much harder, no doubt.
You mean like a contractual obligations change, or I don't know, some legalities, or the perception?
Physically selling the business, just tax implications, just the physical mechanics of selling the business to somebody else has been really, really tricky. When we're selling from an EU company into selling it to a British company, that's been tricky. No, day to day in terms of clients, not so much. But of course, everyone who's exporting or has got physical goods going in and out of the country, I think that's been incredibly difficult. less impact on less knowledge.
I remember the difference between moving my furniture from EU to UK when I was going there, and then moving out and leaving the houseplants in the UK because we couldn't.
So many people, so many. Yeah, it's a tragedy. We need in the UK. We need some sort of empire, truth and reconciliation, because we are so mired in a bonkers view of our own history that unless I really believe that unless in the UK, I'm an outsider to the UK. My parents are South African. I've always thought of myself as an outsider. I don't really understand Brits. I know I speak with a British accent, but I've never really felt, and I just don't. The reality of our history, of the British history, relative to what we as Brits think of our history, it's just absolute chalk and cheese, isn't it? I mean, that's probably the subject of a whole nother podcast. But I truly believe that as a nation, we actually need to genuinely we need to figure it out, because it leads us to disaster, right?
With this company, when you actually import these developers, how do you see the risk? This is my kind of internal risk manager immediately chiming in. How do you manage the risk of having developers kind of in EU and possibly in different employment law? Brexit caused a big change in employment conditions.
Our developers in Spain are in Gran Canaria, so we don't bring developers to the UK. We have always recruited young people from the university. So we've always had a pretty good program of bringing young developers on. So we've never had a problem. We've never really had a problem recruiting, because we've always just taken the view that part of Rich's kind of mantra of happiness and treating people well, which is kind of at the heart of what Secret Sauce is about. We've always just done that. So we don't have that movement of people. We've always worked remotely. We've always worked remotely. So yeah.
That leads me to the question about green deep. Let's go deep into green.
Yeah.
You have support communities, you give your heat away, you have very decentralized operations. Do you also support communities by hiring locally to build it? Like, what's your operational model? Because if you even when we are talking about these batteries for every house, somebody needs to go and install it. How do you organize all this chaotic distributed work where you invested, you said 3.5 billion into this?
Well, we're on that journey. We've got to deploy that capital for 4.5 years. Yeah, how do you do it? Yeah. I think the truth is, at the start, now we are just desperately trying to get stuff built. We're just trying to get stuff qualified and get it built. Certainly in terms of the provenance of materials, the provenance of the suppliers we're using, we're being pretty careful about how that's managed. So there's a kind of there's a due diligence process around that. I guess we're more focused on what happens to the community when they've got that free heat. That seems developing is important, and making sure that we're using recycled materials whenever we can, and doing everything as kind of as well as we might on the carbon and the kind of the sustainability front. I think where our CMO and where I kind of get particularly interested in is we're starting to look at aquaculture. So how you grow fish in warm water from data centers, how you make water, how you carbon capture, there's a whole bunch of use cases for low grade heat. That's where we get really excited, because that to us is jobs. That's real jobs, right? That's the reality is data centers don't really employ that many people. Everyone lies when they're building 100 megawatt data centers. They all say, we're going to create 1,000 jobs, and then you look at Google Earth, and the car park of a data center, there's like 3 cars in it. Do you know what I mean? It's not true. So we've never made the assumption that the data center itself will create a great deal of employment, but if we can give the heat away, and we can create I'm investing in and we're going to be hosting, we hope, one of the UK's first commercially viable aquaculture parks, where from a technology from St Andrews called RasTech, where they're growing prawns in warm water, but in artificial tanks. It's a lovely, amazing business. But the prawn industry creates more carbon dioxide than the airline industry. It's an environmental disaster, basically, prawns. So this is making protein, good quality protein locally. You put a data center is in Doncaster. You build an aquaculture part there, so you've got protein that's been generated in Doncaster for local people. So that's what we really love and what we kind of want to focus on. The building is important. It's one thing, but actually, and that should be how business works, right? I'm increasingly kind of skeptical of this argument that we all might have a view of how the world works economically, but capitalism is a very, very young concept. Do you know what I mean? Like
especially the current, I would say, incarnation of capitalism. We have this neoliberalism, which started, I think, in '70s as a theory.
Yeah.
So I agree. Like this idea is pretty new.
I think any business needs to have not just one eye on society and what it's doing in local communities, but that should be the reason why it exists and how it exists. I think that's again probably a topic for another podcast. But this notion of value and use value, what is useful to society and what isn't, in a climate emergency, we've all going to have to ask ourselves these pretty awkward questions, right?
I don't think it's actually too different because it's between data and risk, and I think that the risk to the climate is one of the biggest risks that we have, and also the risk to the whole fabric of society. We are seeing absolutely dramatically rising the stratification of society.
Yeah.
I happen to live now in Slovenia, which has the smallest stratification in all Europe. And how the people talk to each other in shop on the street is different than it was in the UK.
Right.
It's one of the safest countries, and people are proud of what they are doing. It's not only about how much you make, it's about how well you do what you do. So I'm very happy that you talk to me about your perception, because most of our guests in the, let's say, previous incarnation of Between Data and Risk were from the US. And then this discussion was a bit different. As I said, sometimes you need to ask yourself, like, is it this mission, vision, and values something that you just put on paper and then you leave all the rest to the account I don't have success on your scale to prove, you can do it differently, but I'm absolutely delighted that someone who is thinking how to make money while doing something actually useful, for me, it's a great listen. I hope our audience will enjoy the change of pace.
I hope. I mean, when nobody's perfect, and you operate within a system, and the reality is, within any structure, you need to look at some degree. You need to look at the bottom line. You need to make sure you are making money. But there are ways and means of doing that in the right way. And I think that's what I've never really thought there's any equity in equity. The only equity there's that kind of cliche, which is, all cliches, of course, are true, which is the only equity in life is family and connection. And so I think we as a species probably have got, as you say, whenever it took off, or whenever wherever we've got to started, we have lost a lot of what brings joy to our lives. And the reality is, money is well down that list. And so, I mean,
it's necessary. It's necessary.
Absolutely a level, but I think it's amazing how many unhappy rich people you see.
I've seen a research. It was a couple of years ago, so the exact number changed probably over the decade or so.
Yeah.
But they were checking what is the correlation between the satisfaction and the salary level.
Yeah.
And there was a direct correlation up to, I think, $6,000 a month.
Yes, I think it's £100,000, or it's quite a lot of money. You've got to have as you say, a certain level, but and then every pound or dollar after that, the marginal gain of that is almost zero, right?
Diminishing value.
Yeah.
For me, it's really interesting because I have nothing against making money, but it's like when you can do it doing the right thing, why not?
Why not? Yes, quite. And that's absolutely. And I just find there's a if you find yourself doing something that is kind of grounded in something real and interesting and right, it's just so much easier. It's just so much more fun. It just has you have a spring in your step. Whereas, I think just chasing the money for the sake of it is it's certainly not where I've landed.
This is my question. Like, you worked for venture capital. for a long time. And you've seen a lot of companies build, and I guess you worked with the founders for longer than just
Right,
dropping them a
yeah.
check. Do you see the correlation between, I would say, social usefulness of the solutions that they created and the personal satisfaction?
Without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, yeah, unanswerably. Yeah, I mean, I would say, I mean, but then my view is skewed. I mean, the first business I started was with an East German a friend who's still a friend, and we started. It's called Artist First, and we put all the equity in escrow, and then every time the PRS sent us a cease, and this is 25, 30 years ago, we were building download platforms for artists in the music business, and we called Artists First, and we were sort of pirates, but in a kind of tongue-in-cheek fun. We were kids, right? So my view is always skewed. I've never seen business as I've always seen it as a game and as a joyful kind of exploration, as an adventure. I've never really thought of myself in business. So I maybe I'm not the right person to ask, I guess, because I've only ever hung out with people or at least been involved in businesses where people have shared those sort of values. I couldn't. I was in a meeting recently, and I was with some friends, and it was a brilliant. We think it's a brilliant bit of technology, and we were pitching it, and the person who we were pitching it to said, "Oh, you could use the biggest use cases for this," and it was like, shit, yeah, that's right. And the minute you realise that the use case is kind of toxic. For me, it's kind of, I don't know, I'm really fond of quoting that it's very pretentious, but there's the transformational power of commitment. If you're committed to something, then it's just easier, isn't it? And the world changes with you. So that's just how I'm wired. It's not a choice. It's just how I'm wired.
I would say it's pretty uncapitalistic view of things, because many founders that I've seen, they are so focused on just another round and how to convince investors that it's worth, pulling the cards a bit further, that I find it refreshing, I think.
I'm terrible at that. I'm terrible with money. I have my deal man, who is now the CEO of Deep Green, who's a friend I've known for 15 years. He always did that. He's 25 years in the city. He loves that. And it's just what you love in life. I just have no interest in that side of I sort of do it because I have to, but I think I've always been wired like that. I don't know why. But as you say, it's a skepticism of what we all see as the negative and the unintended consequences of the economic system we have. Right? I'm not for one moment saying that any other economic system has done any better. I think we're all so aware of inequality and what's going on in the world, and of course it's all linked to the transition because everything is linked, right?
I think there was, when we are talking about different systems, I think in between 50s and 70s in the US, there was a short period when things were really growing for everyone.
Yes.
Then there was this neoliberal revolution that actually decided to break the working class. Here we are.
Yeah. And I think you can say we kind of coming off the gold standard at the end of the Vietnam War. I mean, I think you can point to different sort of waypoints in history, but somewhere along the line. I mean, the irony, if you go back to UK early 80s and you look at Thatcher's privatization, it was breathtakingly naive. Like, they privatized the water and the gas and the electricity companies, genuinely believing that the financiers would take some sort of moral, avuncular approach in a collective, nationwide kind of. You look at the actual legal documents of privatization. I mean, of course, Macquarie were going to strip it of £70 billion. Yeah, because they were given an open door to it. It was kind of done in I don't know. All along the way, we've nudged further and further away from some sort of equilibrium, haven't we? Yeah.
I'm still hoping, I still have friends who live in the UK, and I hope that NHS won't be privatized. I know that, but
I'm a natural optimist. I think people find their way back to the mean. I think you can see it already starting, and I think part of what we're doing in our own little way, what I love about Deep Green is that there is love and reciprocity in a business model that works. I think human beings, I think the kids particularly, I think the kids smell bullshit, to be honest. I think a lot of kids are like, they can see that this whole system is just wired wrong. So I have some hope. I don't think, but I think most of the time, most people have just got to stop talking and just get on with it. You know, there's a powerful bias to action that I think, you know, a lot of people we've lost, particularly in the kind of entrepreneurial community. I think a lot of talk and then not enough. Just get on with it. Just do something.
You know who is a pessimist?
Who's that?
You said that you're an optimist. Pessimist is a well-informed optimist.
Well, yeah.
My view is, unfortunately, that it is in a way, you know, I would say, way to the mean, or, you know, going to the mean. The problem is it's a pendulum.
Yeah.
It's never stopping there.
No.
It goes, and then unfortunately it
goes the other way.
swings. And this is okay. Thank you very much for the discussion. We moved across topics, but I loved it.
Well, it's very enjoyable. Thanks for having me.
As we always say, let's hope it was of use to someone.